That is beautiful. I'm here with Marvin Sewell, and we're going to talk about steel guitar playing and electric guitar playing and anything else that crosses our paths. So the first thing I want to ask you, because we just played together and I noticed a lot of stuff you're doing on the National Steel guitar that most people don't do, is you're playing an open D tuning, but you're playing all kinds of chords with the slide that are actually really hard to execute. And you told me how you had learned how to play an open D as if it were a normal guitar tuning. So can you just show us a couple of those voicings and how you get it in tune? And you know, how you must have spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah, I mean, in a way I had to, because I was gigging and I had to, you know, prepare for the gigs and stuff, because, you know, I say, hey man, you know, intonation is off and stuff. I mean, you know, and you know, you can never be perfectly in tune, and I try my best to play much as in tune as possible, but also I don't try to be fanatical about it. It's because some notes a little flat or a little sharp add some color to it and stuff. You don't want to, you know, you can acquire some what some people would call more natural sounds, sounds of nature and stuff like that, you know. But you know, I sometimes what I do to try to, if I'm using combination of notes that I play on the slide and fretted notes, I try to shake the slide a little, and it's also dealing with adjustments. You don't, for me, I don't want my action too high and I don't want it too low, so it becomes, you know, a thing. And stop me if I'm started babbling, but you know.
Well, no, because what you're talking about is the huge issue of these guitars. First of all, they're very hard to play a single note on, because they're bulky. They've got a lot of personality that can work for you or against you if you lose control of the guitar. You know, like a new electric guitar is set up to play like a Cadillac. These are like old Packards with no power steering.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but that being said, most people are just playing open tuning, you know, bar chords and single notes. Now, not to put you on the spot, but I don't think this will be a problem for you at all. Can you take a jazz standard that we might know, whatever is right for you, and just play a little bit doing what you're doing with the slide, so we see how you negotiate chord changes on this thing. Then we'll play some open tuning stuff, but I'd love to see that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if but for me, I don't come across, I guess I could play jazz standards on here, but I also didn't want to do that either. I didn't want to like play slide and be a bebop player that plays slide. No. You know, but I can, but what I will do, I can, you know, do like progressions.
Yeah, a couple of chord
stuff,
progressions.
You know,
yeah, that's what I'm talking
about.
You know,
so.
That's gorgeous. That's
stuff
so,
like that.
But in case anybody's wondering who's watching that, it's very, very hard to do because you're dealing with contortions of the hand, really, that are quite challenging, and then just trying to get the slide straight so that 3 or 4 notes will be in tune. that's a battle. Let me ask you this: your formative influences on this instrument would be?
It's more comes from Delta, and then going into Chicago blues.
Because you're from Chicago,
right?
As I recall, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would listen to Son House, Robert Johnson, Big Bill Bronzy, Charlie Patton, and more country, Mississippi John Hurt, and Blind Willie Johnson. So many of those cats and stuff that I would listen to. But but I also grew up checking out Chicago, more of the Chicago blues stuff. Jimmy Rogers, Jimmy Dawkins, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, losing names.
Well, all of them.
Hubert Sumlin.
Yeah.
It's idol of mine, Rico McFarlane and stuff, and he played with a lot of masters and stuff. He's still in Chicago playing a lot and stuff.
Wow.
A friend of mine who I grew up with, late great Burt Mayo, who was Robert Nighthawk's nephew, and that was a major influence, Robert Nighthawk and stuff. So I started, just kind of picking stuff up on my own, and trying to learn and sort of imitating a little bit. But after a while,
you got your own thing.
Yeah, I was trying to develop
your own
my stuff. Yeah. Because I always thought that's what I was kind of taught, that was the tradition, is to try to put your voice into the music and stuff. So,
who's the first person you heard that from? Can you remember?
That particular putting your voice into the music, it was probably Freddie Hubbard.
Who said put your own?
Yeah, it was basically like, I think it was sort of like a quote, like he said that he'd take a little bit from Dizzy, he'd take a little bit from Clifford, he'd take a little bit from maybe Fats Navarro or Louis Armstrong and stuff, and he'd mix it all up and then put his thing to it. And I that's the impression that stuck with me, is that, you're supposed to have your own voice within our own time. It's because now this is a unique time. It's a unique time. It's different. Lightning Hopkins didn't have to deal with the internet and social media and the stuff that's going on now. So we have to try to deal and play in the present. Meanwhile, the past giving us some foundation and helping us guide us and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, and if you believe all of it is existing at the same time, that's another conversation. But
well, yeah, it definitely is.
But yeah,
Well, let me ask you this: what years were you in Chicago growing up? Your formative your teenage years before you went off to school.
I grew up in Chicago, a teenager, like in the 70s and 80s.
Now, did you go? How alive was the local blues scene then, the South Side scene? And because that obviously by now it's changed a lot. But were you able to see some of these masters play?
Yeah, I grew up on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of cats playing. Some of these cats were my friends, being sidemen. I saw Little Milton play. I saw Artie Blues Boy White. I saw Otis Rush.
You told me that really freaked you out when you saw Otis Rush.
Yeah, that was. I could not. I barely moved an inch watching him.
The intensity,
the sound, the singing, the playing. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I think he was playing this red 335 or Epiphone. I don't know. So it was a while ago, but it was guys like that, that really like, in far as, then, I grew up interested in guitar because of funk music and listening to, Hendrix, the Isley Brothers, Ernie Isley, and listening to like a lot of stuff that was on black radio, like Marvin Gaye, and being interested in who played guitar on the record and stuff, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you get calls for gigs at that time in your life just to play some funk? Because we think of you as I think of you as mostly a jazz player, although obviously very eclectic, but it's kind of fun to think about, growing up and getting called to do a funk gig. And
yeah, I was able to do some stuff. I remember I played with this one guy and he really drilled me. He said, man, your playing is too jazzy. You really need to fit into some R&B funk stuff. So I worked with him for about a year, just in his basement, and started learning really the fine art of like coming up with a part and being committed to it.
Wow.
And and I started finally getting the sound, and I was getting a nice, something was going on with my pickups, because I had a cheap Les Paul copy guitar, and something was going on with my pickups where I was getting it to sound like a Strat.
Wow.
Like, yeah, that's the sound and stuff, So I mean, I was doing that, and and playing in some bands and stuff, but
right.
And doing some gospel music, but at the same time I was playing a little acoustic guitar in Catholic church.
Oh.
So it was
mixture.
Yeah, a mixture of stuff.
Yeah.
And
I might have to ask you to play some funk when we go to the electric.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can function as like a rhythm guitar player, because I used to go to the rehearsals. Like I got interested in playing because a friend of mine across the street played bass, so I would go to his rehearsals that he had with a gospel group, or go to like a basement bands where they were playing funk and stuff. And the rhythm guitar player, he played all of these chords, so I was interested in that.
Yeah. I grew up in the 70s too, and although I pretty much discovered funk a little later in life as something that I was passionate about. That was such an important time for the guitar, the late 60s and the early 70s, for rhythm guitarists. Of course, we think a lot about the fusion players and the jazz players of that era.
Right.
But I think modern contemporary music, when there is a guitar, is still drawing primarily from the innovations that some of the stronger funk bands made at that time. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think, in a lot of instances, I think it really made the music go in a certain way. And it's almost like it's being in that situation, almost like today could be almost like a thankless job. It's because everybody wants to be a great soloist and play, all of these nice runs, and that's cool. But being able to like play some rhythm and function in a band, even on the jazz side of things, being able to comp well.
Yes.
You can work.
Yes.
People still love tasty playing and stuff.
Well, I associate that with your personality as a guitar player. Like, I've seen you play. I remember I came down to the bitter end once. You were playing with my friend Chulo Gatewood and playing a fusion guitar.
Yeah.
Playing all this fast stuff, and I said, I didn't even know you could do that, because previous to that, most of what I'd heard that you did is exactly what you just described, where you were performing the function of the rhythm guitarist, soloing, but in a very high level way. That's how I associate you. Like you're a person who has played, for instance, with singers who are looking for really strong support, but also a distinctive sound. Am I accurate, do you think?
I think so. Yeah. You know, if I just try to come up with nice textural and color palettes and stuff, and particularly playing with Cassandra Wilson kind of helped me develop a lot of that stuff. I was into that before playing with her, but the gig, actually having a gig and actually being thrown into the arena, if you will. Yes. And okay, I said, okay, I have to develop this, and I have to develop more, and learn these tunings, and get the sounds, learn the tune. Meanwhile, trying to put my own personality to it. Yeah. Because an artist like her, she definitely wouldn't like me sounding like somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. So that even with playing with before that, playing with Jack DeJohnette, those artists call for you to play you. They don't want to hear any type of cliches. They don't want to hear like any licks or anything like that. So you kind of have to, Yeah. So in terms of, I was doing some research on you, and I didn't know this. I learned that you played on the Joni Mitchell 75 birthday anniversary concert. That's, I think, a record. Yeah. So talk about being put on a high level, on a high level playing field where you're supporting. Tell us a little bit about that, because some of those renditions of those songs and all that star cast of singers are absolutely gorgeous. It was the gigs that I think with that particular project with John Coward and Brian Blade, I think we did a total of about 5 or 6 hits. With different combination of singers and stuff. The most challenging thing with me was negotiating the guitars and the guitar tunings. It's because I had someone write to me and ask me, well, did you use Joni's tunings? I said, well, some of them I did, but I couldn't. I mean, it's because everybody doesn't sing. These guest singers, everybody doesn't sing in the same key that the tune was in. And some people say, hey, well, I want to do this arrangement. I remember I think we were doing, maybe it was Coyote. And one singer, Glenn Hansard. Yeah, I think one time at a rehearsal in LA, we went through 8 keys. You can't do that in open tuning. Figure out where he wanted it. Yeah. And stuff. So, and it's the same thing when I played with Cassandra. I had to figure out, I had to average the keys out. It's because I had limited instruments that I could use. That the backline people, the people who were running the program, they weren't gonna provide me with 18 guitars. like Greg Lease gave me, because he played with Joni. Greg Lease gave me a sheet. Yeah. Of about 50 Joni tunes and all of the tunings. Wow. I'd love to see that sheet. Yeah, I have it. I'll pass it on to you. But so I had to, figure out, okay, how am I going to negotiate this? I think they did a Joni show, I think, in Vegas, and the guitarist who I think she used to play with Prince, I think it was Lisa. But she played on she played with Prince in the Revolution. I heard she used 17 guitars. I mean that's great, and that's amazing. It's amazing. She's not carrying them or tuning them though. Right. I didn't have a guitar tech, and they weren't going like, who is this dude? You asking for 18 guitars. Well, I'm using this tune. I need this guitar synthesizer thing. To switch my tune to the V system or whatever and stuff. I mean, I couldn't do it. I had to figure out, well, how am I gonna play these tunes and make it? That's so interesting. Sound, kind of quote unquote authentic. But at the same time, I had to, you had one of the first gigs. Kurt Elling was on the hit. Cassandra Wilson, Amy Mann, Shaka Khan, Chris Hansard, and then some of the other gigs there were other people, Seal, I mean, there were variety of singers there, and they, Patty Austin one hit,
soprano to
yeah.
baritone.
Yeah, I mean, it was like saying, I can't do it in that key. I have to do it in this key and stuff like that. And it's like, okay,
on the spot.
Yeah, what I'm gonna say,
well, Joni didn't do it in that tuning, so you're gonna have to switch the tuning, adjust to Joni's tuning.
Yeah,
it's not reality.
Yeah. Well, speaking of tunings, I want to get back to these guitars because you are particularly adept at playing some of the Sun House stuff, and I'm like a visitor, I would say, to that realm. So when we played together, we did a little of that, and I just tried to back you up. But this is one of these things that when you see somebody do it, it doesn't look that hard, but it's like an athletic endeavor to do what you're about to see Marvin do with a slide and this kind of up-tempo Delta blues thing.
Yeah. Okay.
That song, that style was written when it was just one guy and he had to make people dance. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a thing that you would hear, like, type of thing, Sun House, Robert Johnson, or Charlie Patton do.
Yeah.
But,
but isn't that coming historically from a time when the music was developed like on a plantation and there was a Saturday night dance and there was just a guy with a guitar and people wanted to party and dance and it's all in that riff, the boogie, the melody, and then somebody might be singing on top of it.
Yeah, or the guitarist, whoever him or her were, they were singing and playing and stuff, so. It was that, and it's the same thing. Almost B.B. King's relative also kind of played in the South, Booker White. Yeah, and a lot of tapping, like rhythmic stuff with the hands and stuff, and the guitar and stuff.
Yeah, that guy's amazing. It's
a lot of there's so many players from that era even until today that you just never people like you just never heard of.
Yeah.
They're out here and stuff,
Yeah.
So
so you think that there are people playing this style on these guitars today to some sort of degree?
Yeah, I'm almost certain that if you go into the Carolinas, you go into Mississippi, or anywhere, even Chicago or Texas, or you'll find people out here doing the thing, or the Carolinas. I did say that, but it's just like with a sacred steel guitar. They have conventions and stuff. You have like 13, 14, 15-year-old kids,
Well, that
really
got some press and some traction because of Robert Randolph and a lot of people never knew about that till they.
Yeah.
I forget why. I don't remember why or how that started to get better known, but well, maybe we need a national steel convention.
Oh yeah, right.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Get these guys out of the woodwork. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I'm most fascinated about in the world we live in is like, who are the people that you didn't hear about, and how formative were they? Because there's so many important people that never make it to the limelight. And they taught somebody, or they affected a community. They built the music. So many people built this music that don't necessarily receive recognition.
Right, or and I think that goes even further back. There's probably a lot of great composers that never got the light of day, never been published. So yes, I think it's the same here. I mean, this a lot of Chicago greats. You hear about them a little bit, but
you mentioned a few I'd never heard of.
So,
and, I'm supposed to know about that stuff.
But so some of them I kind of like, kind of local heroes, or people who grew up in the neighborhood, or people who grew up in the neighborhood. So yeah.
Tell me, do a little bit of what you were doing when we were playing, so we can just break it down a little. Like the right hand is really doing some cool stuff.
Yeah. I'm just basically, I don't know if I can explain this.
So this is like a kick drum.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the thumb is the bass drum, and the fingers are the snare drum.
Yeah, and also, I'm also using the thumb too to play, melody, part of the melody, or it's all, I think a lot of things because guitar is such an interesting instrument that you have to, it's a lot to do with. You have a lot to do with the way it is being played, as opposed to piano and with the damper pedal. You almost have to create an illusion in a way.
How do you mean?
It's almost like you have to make it sound like you're doing a bunch of things at the same time, but you're really not. Or of course you can like do 2-3 voices on the guitar and stuff like that. That's very hard, but it's almost like you have to kind of create the sound because the ear is only gonna, you almost gotta fool the ear in a way.
Well, but those instruments are particularly set up for that because they're rhythmic instruments. They're very percussive.
Yeah.
And so you can really create the illusion, if I'm interpreting what you're saying, of there being a drummer there. And a lead player, and almost a bass player.
Right, yeah. So, it's like I'm playing certain things on certain beats and other things on other beats, and maybe some things together. But it all sounds like all of this is going on at the same time.
Right.
But, whatever, was a master at that was I love the way Mississippi Fred McDowell did his thing and stuff, but it's basically what I do. I mean, I use it. I want to that all of this stuff. I want to learn from it. I don't want to copy it, though.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your own voice, I noticed like one of the things that I have done in my life is worked a little with Indian music and applied it to the national steel.
Right.
And I noticed some of those sounds in your playing too. How big an effect has that had on you, and where did you encounter that music?
I think when I was living in Chicago, I was playing with this saxophonist named Santez. I don't know if he's even playing anymore, but Hamid Drake was in the group. He's percussionist, drummer. He's still on the scene. D. Alexander, still on the scene. Ben Yosef Israel on bass. You know, primarily all these people live in Chicago and myself. And they, they started they were into other sounds, because some of them were kind of part of the AACM. And also I knew this one great musician named Light Henry Huff. I used to hang out with him. So he was a saxophonist, composer.
Light Henry Huff?
Yeah.
Is that Light part of his name or a nickname?
I think it was part of his nickname, but I don't know if.
But see, when I hear a name like that, I feel like I know that guy can play.
Yeah,
you don't get a name like that if you can't.
He was great, but something happened to him physically where he didn't have use of his fingers, so he had to not play saxophone that much anymore. He basically almost had to play with his knuckles and stuff, and he started experimenting with taking the guts of the piano out and treating it like a harp. He was actually playing harp. He was playing a little small soprano saxophone, doing as much as he could until he passed away. He's very, very cool brother and stuff.
Wow.
I used to hang out with him, and I think from that I started getting into different sounds and stuff, and checking out different types of music and stuff, and different concepts of the way to play music. Stuff,
wow, everything you just said is like so Chicago to me. Like there was a very particular scene, still is, very particular sounds that came from there, and some of the, of course, our most beloved artists, are from there, and it's just so much a part of you, I'm sure, that town.
Yeah, Chicago was in a lot of aspects, it's a great city to grow up in for music. It's because if you were open enough, you could get into different, you had a deep blues scene there. You had a pretty deep jazz scene, and you had, all the different types of, music from like some of the immigrant communities, like the Irish, Polish communities. You had a folk music there, and so it was the gospel, I mean, so there was a lot there. There is a lot there and stuff. So in funk and R&B, so and house music, I did some house music sessions there, because a friend of mine got very famous doing that. So it was a nice place to grow up and develop. But I eventually, for me, I had to move.
Yes.
But
New York called you. How long have you been in New York?
Since the early 90s.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about electric.
Okay.
Yeah. You got that beautiful black Telecaster there. You want to just swap these out?
Sure.
Here. So, before we get into other stuff, just to backtrack a little, so we were talking about your rhythm guitar chops.
Yeah.
And give us a little taste. It could just be your own thing, but just play some time on that guitar, and just show us how you approach that.
Let's see. Let me turn the reverb down a little. I'm just gonna play whatever. I don't know if it's gonna sound good.
Good.
Or not.
Woo-wee. That
but at the same time,
total
you know,
commitment.
yeah, you committed, you know, but there's other types of playing where you're not just doing this all the time.
There's a
You
lot
know,
of
yeah.
great right hand stuff you're doing, and then the muting. I mean,
You know, something simple like that, or you know, I mean, that's one thing where I learned when I was hanging out in the basement bands, because there were usually two guitar players.
So play some of that stuff, that funk stuff you were doing, and let's watch you stretch out a little bit.
Okay.
So did you listen to the meters much?
That was the thing when I grew up in Chicago. I never even heard of the meters until I moved to the East Coast.
So interesting because there was so much music there.
Yeah.
That is so interesting because I mean the thing about regional guitar playing is so fascinating to me because there was this whole homegrown scene in Chicago you're part of, pre-internet, I should point out. And then there's this whole other thing in the South. There's a New York thing. I mean, there's Nile Rodgers. And that's a different kind of funk playing than what was happening in Chicago, right? Like you probably must have had your own feel, right?
We did, but I knew of Nile Rodgers. Like I knew of the typical cats. I knew of Nile Rodgers. I knew of Al McKay. I knew of Wah Watson. I knew of Paul Jackson Jr. You know, who else? You know, even cats like Dean Parks. I knew all the studio cats: Dean Parks, Lee Ritenour, Larry Carlton, Steve Lukather. You know, I knew about all of those cats. The Jimmy Nolans, the Catfish. You know, all of those cats and James Brown, you know, all of the like popular cats and stuff like that. All cats of Parliament Funkadelic.
Okay, here's what I'm trying to drive at. According to bring back our common friend Chulo Gatewood, right? He's a great New York bass player. He once told me, this is years ago. He said, "I can listen to a bass player and tell you if he's from Chicago." I was like, wow. And I swear to God, once he kind of talked with me about that, I heard a couple of people and I said, that sounds like Chulo, what he's talking about. And sure enough, they were from Chicago. I couldn't possibly articulate it.
Yeah.
But do you think is there something to that for you? A guitar player, a bass player, a feel?
I guess so. I'm trying to think of.
So here's how he described it to me. Because now I'm recalling the conversation. I said, you got to tell me what you mean. He said, because there was a direct route from the South to Chicago, including New Orleans. Okay. He said he felt he could hear New Orleans and certain Chicago players feel.
Oh, I see.
And that a New York or an LA funk feel just had some different flavor to it.
Yeah, but it's interesting because if you're talking about Black Americans in Chicago, most Black Americans from Chicago migrated either mainly Mississippi.
Okay.
My family, you know, I mean, I'm not saying anything that Chulo was wrong. It's because Buddy Guy is actually from Louisiana.
But I think he would have included that the southern, the whole southern diaspora.
Oh, I did.
Not just New Orleans, but
right.
But you could hear that. I'm putting words in his mouth. You hear the funk, the grit, that southern. It's hard to put words to it, but we all know southern music when we hear it.
Yeah. Definitely. You know, especially with especially with blues, it's just electric. But you
and
know,
Memphis
some changes.
Too.
Memphis, Alabama.
That with the urban environment of Chicago.
Yeah.
And of course, we're talking about Chicago blues players too. That's different. I mean, I'm gonna say, and you can correct me, that a Chicago blues player, even if they immigrated from the South, it would sound different well into their career than somebody who had stayed in the South.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. It's more urban, even more the electric blues in Mississippi sounds different from like the more electric blues in Chicago.
Yeah.
And stuff, you know. You know, Chicago is it's a unique city and stuff, and therefore it came out with some unique music, unique interpretation and turn on the music itself.
Yeah.
So,
but feel is what we're talking about. This is one of the most difficult things to really talk about on guitar, but you've got a great feel.
Thank you.
And how do I ask you this? Like when you were, was this a conscious thing for you growing up that you wanted to develop your feel, your approach to rhythm, how everything felt, or was this just something that was in the background?
I think it was kind of a conscious thing for me to develop the rhythm guitar stuff, is because I was hanging out with the basement bands. You know, my friend Wallace Beard, he would have these rehearsals and I would tag along with him and I would see the guitar players. And of course I was interested in what the lead guitarist was doing, you know, playing like, rock stuff and lead with the overdrive and distortion on and stuff. But I was kind of more interested in what the rhythm guitar player was doing, is because I kind of could relate to it a little bit and I knew some chords and I could pick it up. So I started, checking out what they were doing with their wrists and stuff. It was kind of easy for me I could hear it because it was a clean sound. So I was like saying, man, if I can kind of function in that way and stuff, that'd be cool and stuff. And,
But you just used a phrase that's so interesting, the basement bands. That's like only a big city term. What do you exactly mean by that?
Basically, a basement band or a garage band is basically a band.
Garage.
They have a band and they rehearse
and mom's
in somebody's
basement.
Their parents' basements or their parents' garage.
Right.
That's basically what it is. And a lot of those bands that I played with never really even developed into doing a show. You know what I mean? Some of them did a show, man. It was messed up, man. Blah, blah, blah. You got this wrong, and blah, blah, and people arguing, and people had different levels of hearing it be a record player in front, in the basement, everybody trying to pick up the chord. Man, what's that chord? No, that's not it, man. You don't know, no, you can't hear it and stuff, it's like, we trying to, it was kind of crazy and stuff. And then you would have one cat who just could hear anything. You just pick it up. Okay, it's this, and blah, blah, blah. Let's go,
I remember this time we were playing in my basement when I was growing up, and my parents, and one guy had shown up like 2 hours late for the jam session, and then my parents had like an 80-year-old friend sleeping in the room next door to where we were playing, and we had to stop after like 7 minutes because it was so loud.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that is so funny.
Yeah.
All right, so the feel is just something that you're getting from early on. Same thing with your jazz playing. Like when you started to migrate towards jazz and harmony, you know, and all of that, who were the formative people for you? And was feel like the main thing for you? You know, for instance, if it was George Benson and Grant Green, right there, that's like super strong swing feel.
Yeah, well, I think the guitar player that I heard first, as far as on the jazz side of the game, was probably George Benson and then Wes Montgomery. And I remember Kat was telling me, "Oh man, he's too advanced for you. He's too advanced for you. You shouldn't be listening to him," you know, and stuff. You know. But I wore that Breezin' album out. It's because it wasn't just the playing that was brilliant. His playing, it was just the music on it. I think that record still today is a masterpiece.
Yes.
You know, and I started listening to Wes Montgomery, but I used to hear all the Wes Montgomery, the couple of years before he died, all the commercial stuff with the orchestra and stuff. It was a little bit later on when I started hearing like the small group stuff,
Smoking at the Half Note.
Smoking at the Half Note, which blew me away.
Yes.
You know, and some of the smaller studio recordings that blew me away. So I was checking that stuff out, and then, you know, I started hearing about like Joe Pass and Tal Follow, Grant Green, you know, Barney Kessel. But I also I had sort of like a job where you can learn a skill while you work and they pay you. It was, and I was working at Malcolm X Community College. They had a big band. So the primary thing they were concerned about with me is not soloing. You said, you have to learn how to comp.
Right.
You know, so I had to go back and listen to Freddie Green. But not only Freddie Green, they said, you need to listen to some piano players and see how they comp. You need to check out Count Basie. You need to check out Cedar Walton. You need to check out some of Herbie Hancock stuff.
I'm
going
to interrupt because I'm no expert at jazz at what's happening in universities today. But I can tell you that anecdotally, that's just not happening with guitar players today.
Yeah.
That type of ground level information would be enforced on you from day one. Like, whoa, soloing? Who do you think you are? No.
Right.
Go back to Freddie Green. I mean, that's just...
Yeah. Because this big band had two guitar players and a piano player.
But see that stuff is evergreen. You know, you may never play a big band chart, but if you're being instructed that you need to play rhythm in a certain way and be able to drive a band in that way, then it's going to completely change how you approach the guitar.
Yeah, and they drilled that into me. Because it wasn't about me taking solos at all. It was like...
See, this is just, life brings us in different places.
Yeah.
And you had a particular upbringing. Things that you're talking about, I think are so important. Some of them missing from my development. I had to go back later and find them. And... I'm just singling this out for any guitar player watching this because I think there's so much to learn about what it takes to be a working guitarist and what you're saying.
Right.
You might want to write all your own music and be the lead soloist in your band and play some beautiful fancy lines and all that.
Right.
But then there's this whole other thing which is more often going to lead you to actually being employed.
Yeah.
and playing great music. I'm not just
Right.
talking about being in a pit band.
Right.
Some of the people
right.
you've played with
Yeah.
are the best in the world.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to had the honor to share the stage with some greats.
Well, let's play a jazz tune in that style,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just show us who you are. Could we play something that Wes might play, like a D natural blues?
Okay, sure. Sometimes, I practice with records and stuff, and, I practice with the Lester Young record or Wes Montgomery record, and I immediately get intimidated. It's like, man. It's because it is not so much of the runs they play, it's the melodic concept is on such a high level.
Yes.
And rhythmic and the feel, all of
Yeah.
that stuff, it's such on a high level. It's like, man, let me quit noodling and playing and listen to what they're doing, man.
Boy, can I ever relate to that?
It's definitely a thing. But I also feel that way. Like I later on got into Grant Green.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. Is because everybody talked about man, you should check out Grant Green. The one record that blew me away with Grant Green was the I think it's the Live at Mittens album, the Stanley Turrentine record. I think it's a 2 record set, a 2 CD set. That is some incredible playing.
I don't know that record, but I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah. So I mean,
okay.
Let's
Let's play that West tune, and why don't I play the melody so people can watch you play rhythm?
Okay.
Let's see. Give me 1 second. I'll just turn down just a hair. What's a good tempo?
Whatever you want.
2, 1, 2, 3. Wow. You know, the first thing that happened to me when we started playing
Mm-hmm.
is I had to say to myself, whoa, lay back.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I have a tendency to rush. I mean, a lot of us do.
Yeah.
And then I heard your feel, like, immediately it was, like, really deep in that pocket. And I said, okay, just lay back at the beat. And that is it's one of the hardest things to do. You get excited.
Right, yeah. I think we all do and stuff, you know. I mean, I try to be as present as possible, like playing the music and stuff, you know, playing music, period, and stuff.
Mm.
And you know, I try to I strive to play to my goal is to, you know, is to try to play as good as I can, but you know, at the same time, you don't do things that you mean to do, and sometimes you find yourself in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But that's also a good thing. It's because you might open yourself up to other. You have to and I'm still working on this. You still have to have an open mind to hear other things and being able to get out of those situations. You know what I mean? Like if you man, I didn't mean to do that. I kind of missed the so-called change here, but you're in the spot. Then you have to figure out, well, what you're gonna do. I mean, this is the same thing when you run through life. You know, you dealing with stuff. You know, it's things are not gonna be, okay, well, if I do this and it goes that way, then I'm gonna do this. But things are not fit in cubes and squares. Sometimes they odd shapes and stuff like that, and you have to figure out, well, how you gonna get out of this situation? What sound? You know,
I think that,
you know,
that part of mastery is knowing how to recover.
Yeah, it's knowing how to recover
And stay in the moment. Whoa, don't beat
Yeah.
yourself up. You just messed that up, but you still
Yeah.
got half a solo to go.
Right. You know, and also, and you know, and being able to play with people and like say, okay, this is the band right here, and this is what we're gonna do, and this is what it is,
Yeah.
and stuff, you know. So, you know, but you know, trying to like, you know,
Oh, you know, he played the perfect solo, and you know his technique is on par with
you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. So let me ask you
Yeah.
this. There's one thing I meant to ask you last time we played. Now, you mentioned, I think you said your father's from Kentucky.
right.
Now, to what degree is country music a part of your playing? Country guitar playing especially.
I listened to my father listened to some country music and stuff, you know. I mean, you know, growing up during that time, you know, my father religiously, you know, maybe through watching Hee Haw, you know, I got a chance to hear Buck Owens and, you know, Roy Clark and the other guests and some, you know, and, you know, checking out, necessarily say country player, but they actually did delve in that, like Glenn Campbell show and
Oh yeah, he was amazing.
you know, and all of that. So, and then one time, me and a friend of mine, Harold Smith, we discovered the session player Albert Lee.
Ooh.
You know, so we started. I think we found one of his hot licks videotapes, and we started like learning like runs and licks and stuff like that. You know, I don't consider myself a country player or anything like that, but you know,
I hear it in your playing.
you know, but they're like, you know, playing like, you know, messing around with country guitar and classical guitar. It introduced me to a lot of mechanics and stuff, things that you can do with the guitar.
Yeah.
And stuff, you know. You know, like I like learning, like for classical, learning the Giuliani exercises really helped me a lot. You know, for the right
A lot
hand.
of that.
You know, and learning some stuff, listening to cats playing country runs and stuff. But at the same time, I said, man, this is cool that I know these runs and stuff, but how am I gonna put this into my own personality and not just being a parrot and just staying there, But
did you listen to much Western swing? We mentioned Bob Wills earlier.
A little bit of that, but I was listening to I was listening to more of I heard some lap steel stuff. So because I was into that whole the major six sound in a way that they would have, but not. I got into Bob Wills a little later on and stuff, because I heard Jimmy Weibel play with him. I said, oh, really? So I got into a little of that a little later, but it was more. I was like listening to a lot of like bluegrass players like Tony Rice and who's the other guy? Norman Blake. Norman Blake and Doc Watson.
Yeah.
Those type of players I was checking out, and some more of the country studio players out of Nashville. And stuff. But
can we play some sort of song in that?
I'm not very good at it, so I'm not.
Yeah, but you'll just do your own thing.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm no expert. Let's see, what's a good. Did you ever play Roly Poly?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's a Bob Wills tune.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't want to play something you don't know though.
Yeah.
That's the one that Jimmy Weibel plays a beautiful solo on.
Oh, okay.
But So Lonesome I Could Cry.
Yeah, I think I've played that before.
Okay. One, two. I want to. first string? That's really hard to do. Beautiful. Well, let's close out here. I'd love to hear you play. I know you know a lot about the Great American Songbook. Could you just play a chorus of a standard for us just by yourself? Would you mind doing that?
Yeah.
Anything. Beautiful. Well, Marvin, thank you for doing this with me. It's really been a pleasure.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.